Welcome to On My Way to Wealth, the podcast where busy Gen Xers can learn financial tips as they navigate life on their way to wealth. And now, please join your host, Luis Rosa.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of On My Way to Wealth. My name is Luis, and I'm your host. Happy New Year. Today, I have a very special guest. He is actually my nephew. His name is Edward Castillo. He's a certified fitness trainer. Is that correct?
Yeah, personal trainer.
All right, certified personal trainer and a content creator. And we're going to learn a lot about some of the parallels between fitness and also personal finance and how the two basically can make you richer. Before we get into any of it, I think it's a great time of the year to talk about this because a lot of people probably messed up in December because of the holidays. And now, they make their resolutions, and one of them is usually health, right? Losing weight and so on. So I thought that would be great to have you during this time of year. So welcome.
Thank you for having me, Uncle. Appreciate you.
Yeah, my pleasure. So tell us a little bit about your background and ultimately how you ended up getting into fitness.
Yeah, sure. So without getting too far back, I studied at Syracuse University. Actually, which I studied finance and economics. Right around senior year, I realized it wasn't something that I wanted to do. I already started to cultivate my passion for fitness. The fraternity I was in, a lot of the guys were super into it. And for shallow reasons, I kind of just wanted to look like big and muscular. Over time, that developed to be more health focused than just aesthetic. But that's where it all started. I graduated college. I worked for Morgan Stanley. So I was at a bank for 2 years. And then I just worked various sales jobs. The one thing that was consistent throughout my career, though, was the fitness element. So I was always working out. People would look at me like, oh, like you're on this new meal plan. I was always doing something out of the ordinary to them anyway. But that was always consistent. And then last year I decided to move to Miami, and I had a thought about like, hey, maybe I should be a fitness coach. Maybe I should be a personal trainer. I was doing some of that on the side in New York, just at the local level to like some friends, sons and daughters of friends. But I wasn't doing it full time because I was still working in sales. And then when I got to Miami, I actually had the opportunity to, we're kind of at the mecca of fitness, if you will. And I had the opportunity to go full time. And I've been here for about a year now.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, I was going to ask you why you chose Miami, but you answered that. So it's the mecca of fitness.
Yeah, that it is, for sure.
Well, it's a beautiful weather and people just got to look good all year round, right?
Yeah, exactly.
No, I love it. So, a lot of people might wonder like, oh, how are personal fitness and personal finance related? So I wanted to discuss a few things. I'm going to list a few things and then we'll talk about each, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like they both require discipline and consistency to achieve your goals. Mm-hmm. Usually you want to set goals and actually track it in order to see what the progress is. And if you need to make adjustments, you got to put time and effort for both. They're necessary, right? Mm-hmm. You don't have to do it alone, which is a big one here. And I know you do a lot of that with your content that you put out, encouraging people to partner up. And also being healthy can actually help you save money. And we're going to go into some of those ways how we do that. So let's talk about the first one. So talk about discipline and consistency.
For sure. So discipline and consistency is probably the hardest in my opinion. I always tell my clients, I wish I could give you a pill that would instill that discipline and consistency that you need to see results in the gym. But that's what I think is the hardest one. Like you said, as it regards to personal finance, it's the same thing. You have to, like compound interest, over time, see results by staying consistent and going to the gym time after time. So same thing with personal finance, in my opinion.
Yeah. And, I find that a lot of people, like they have a negative connotation on the word discipline because it sounds harsh. Typically like when you were a kid, like, yeah, your parents disciplined you, right? So it was always like a negative thing. Sure. But I find that discipline could actually be freeing because you don't rely anymore on willpower, because motivation and willpower is going to get you just so far, right? That some days you just not going to feel like doing it.
Right. Yeah. And I heard it. I forgot which podcast I was actually listening to, but motivation will always waver. So if you're acting off motivation, There are times where you just get up, you don't feel like going to the gym. That's always going to waver. But the one thing that stays consistent is discipline. And that's what's going to drive you to get up in the morning and show up time after time. And then discipline is sort of a muscle that you start to build, because the more often you do it, like the time that you go knowing that you only got 5 hours of sleep, or the time that you show up to the gym knowing that you are tired and you're hungry and you haven't eaten, those are the times that start to build that discipline muscle, which in turn over time will yield results.
Yeah, I love that concept of the discipline muscle, because I think in personal finance it's the same. People have the same negative connotation to the word budget, similar to how they have a negative connotation to the word diet, right? Mm-hmm. Nobody wants to diet because it sounds restrictive.
Right, exactly.
And companies run on a budget, governments operate on a budget. And I tell people personal finance should be the same way. Like your household or your individual finances should be run on a budget. You can budget for fun things, right? You can budget for vacations. It doesn't mean that you're restricted. You can budget for, your personal finance as well, right? Gym memberships and so on. So I think it's getting over that hurdle of thinking of budgeting, discipline, diet as a negative connotation in the first place. I feel like they could be freeing. Often in finance, one of the things I tell my clients is to put their savings on automated, right? Because if you get paid and then you manually have to make a transfer to your savings account, usually life happens, right? There's always something that wants the attention of those dollars. But if you say, you know what, I'm just going to put 10% of my paycheck into my 401k automatically, right? Like out of sight, out of mind, right? That's the discipline right there, building that muscle.
And yeah, I think that's a great point. Also with budget and diet, it's really just another word if you think about it for plan. Like it's a plan in place specific to your finances, or a plan in place specific to your goal at the gym. And I forget where I hear this, but I've always heard abide by the 5 Ps, and it's proper preparation prevents poor performance. It's the same thing. If you abide by that and you have a game plan, both with personal finance and with the gym, you're a lot more likely to adhere to the protocol and see success.
Oh, I love that. Proper preparation
prevents poor performance. The
prevents
5 Ps.
Poor performance. All right.
Yeah.
I love that. Quintuple P.
Exactly.
And you make a great segue into the second one, which was talking about goals and progress, right? So I feel like a lot of the times people are not specific enough with their goals. So let's say when it comes to personal finance, if you say like, oh, I just want to make more money, it's not specific enough. And I can give you $1 and you've made more money, but that's probably not what you meant, right? So how do you work, let's say, with your clients now in terms of being specific about their fitness goals? And then we'll tie it into personal finance.
Absolutely. So yeah, it's I think what you're speaking to this is the SMART framework, and it's the first one to be specific with your goals. And I often get clients who come in and they're like, hey, I want to lose weight. And it's oftentimes just having the conversation of being, that's awesome. How much weight, right? How much muscle mass are you trying to putting an actual number? Because then from there, we can work backward. We're like, okay, awesome. You want to lose weight? It's been shown that a healthy man or female can lose about 2% body fat a month. If you're telling me you want to lose 20 pounds and you're 200 pounds, then let's reverse engineer and see how many pounds a month you would have to lose. And then it allows us to work backward from ultimately where we're trying to arrive.
Yeah, it's so funny because that's the exact same thing I do with clients. So it'll be if somebody says, hey, I want to retire at 60 or 55 and they're 25. All right, so we got 30 years. Well, here's how much money you need to have at that age to live the rest of your life, right? So what do we need to do today? And we break it down into smaller chunks, which is another thing I wanted to ask you about. Sometimes the overall goal may seem so unattainable, right? Somebody tells you, I want to lose 20 pounds. Like that sounds like a lot. But if you say, hey, how much time you want to do this in, maybe it only comes down to like £1 a week or whatever, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And what you're speaking to is the macro versus the micro. Like within your overall goal, there's a macro plan in place, but then there should also be like micro, almost checklist or to-do item that you have to achieve. So if you do want to lose that £1 a week, all right, well, we know that means you're going to have to be at a deficit of 200 to 500 calories. What exact kind of foods are you going to incorporate in your diet or maybe abstain from to ensure that you're somewhere within that range? So that's exactly right.
Yeah, it's funny because in personal finance, you want to be at a surplus.
Yeah,
But here you want to be at a
exactly.
deficit.
Exactly.
For sure. How important is tracking, just actually measuring and seeing where you are and if you need to pivot from there?
It's super important. One of the benefits of the gym that I work for, so I'm currently a full time trainer at Equinox, is that we have access to a scale that not only tells you how much you weigh, because that number is so dynamic and is constantly changing based on how hydrated you are, based on what time of the day you weigh yourself, what you've eaten. We have a scale that it's actually like a $7,000 scale that allows you to see what that total number is made up of, right? So, like, okay, you're 170 pounds. How much of that is body fat? How much of that is muscle mass? And then from there, we can start to track month to month at the end of each program to see what progress you're making. So, it's super important because oftentimes, even if you don't have access to something like that, it could be something like, okay, I have this t-shirt or I have these pants. I'm trying to get into this size 32 and it's been a year. You have something that's going to help you stay on track, because if you're not tracking, then you're just guessing. And you want to make sure that you're focused and you know exactly what path you're headed and that you're on the right way there.
Yeah, I love that. If you're not tracking, you're just guessing. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Same thing with your finances. Yeah, if you're not tracking your goals, checking in every once in a while, seeing if you continue to save, paying down your credit card bills, student loans, and so on. Like, you just like they say. I read Napoleon Hill. He says, like a
Nice.
rudderless ship, right? Like you just, you need to know what your destination is, because then you'll know what moves you need to make to get there, right?
Sure.
And if you're on
Let me
track.
ask you. Let me ask you a question, if you don't mind. What are some of the ways that you help people track? Because as it relates to personal finance, for example, I have an app that I've recently started using called Rocket Money. Not sure if you've heard of it, and it's been a helpful tool that helps me track some of my personal finance. But I'd love to hear your 2 cents on this.
All right, yeah, we'll put a link to that as well. Um, Yeah, a lot of the times, depending on the goal, right? If it's something, if somebody wants to track their spending, I usually would recommend some sort of app to help them track their money, right? Could be like You Need a Budget, or maybe, something like the Rocket Money.
Mm-hmm.
If it's bigger goals, like saving for a down payment for a house, for example, or saving for their kids' colleges, then I have several meetings throughout the year with my clients. And then we just have those conversations like, all right, we've been saving X amount of dollars every month towards this goal. And where are we now? All right. Yeah. So if we'll keep at this pace, we'll have this within the time frame, right? That way, in case adjustments need to be made, we have the opportunity to change course ahead of time. So
Okay.
basically through periodic check-ins with my clients is how I
Okay.
usually
Yeah.
do it on the bigger goals.
Yeah, that would be equivalent to like our monthly reassessment. See if we have to pivot, if we have to manipulate the program, increase your calories or decrease. That's awesome.
Yeah, and it's also a great segue for the next one, which is you don't have to do it alone.
Mm,
Oftentimes people, let's say on the personal finance side, they don't know where to start. If they have debt, like which credit card do I pay first? Do I start saving? Like, I get a lot of those questions. People
mhm.
that even have some money left over at the end of the month, they're like, should I start paying off my student loans? Should I build an emergency savings? Like, which one should I pay off first? I don't know what to do. They don't know where to invest, right? So
Mhm.
I always tell them, pairing yourself with someone that it could be like a financial planner, for example, that knows what they're doing. Or if you have a good handle on them, but you just want that accountability piece, you can have a partner, right? So whether it's like your significant other, I suggest having money dates, right? Because then you get to talk about these things. Somebody
Mm.
you have to be accountable to, right? So
Yeah,
tell me
yeah.
about not doing it alone on the fitness side.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's funny. So, as you've probably seen on my social media, I'm training for my first ever half marathon. And me being a coach and probably being able to put together some sort of program, that's not necessarily my specialty, right? So, I actually hired one of the coaches that I work with, who she focuses on like triathlon training and is certified in that, to help me undergo that process. Because being the coach, I understand the value of having a professional take care of all the strategic planning and the accountability part. I always tell people, and I tell this to my clients, I'm like, because sometimes there's that pushback, like, I think I can do this myself. And it's like, well, you could probably also do your own taxes, but then you're not going to get back any money. It's kind of the same thing. It's just about, and that's always just been a personal philosophy of mine, where I can outsource for a professional, I will.
I love that mentality. I see a lot of the successful people that I follow. are big believers in hiring coaches, and if you think about it, even like the best people at what they do have coaches, right? LeBron James, all these guys that are
Right.
super famous, obviously they could afford to pay one, but the mentality is, even though you're great at this, you still hire somebody that has a different perspective and is a special, a specialist at what they do. And I'm a big believer in that too. Like, I don't, like you said, somebody, yeah, can you do your own taxes? Sure, right? You can change your own oil.
Right.
My
All of
luck,
that.
I'll leave something loose and like blow the whole engine, right? So
Exactly.
I'd
Yeah.
rather defer and contract out to experts whenever I could as well. So I love that you think the same way.
And I always tell people, I'm like, listen, it might not be as accessible because I think we have a tendency to think it's 0 or 100. I either have to work with a trainer 5 times a week, or I have to work with a financial planner 5 times a week, or I just will do it on my own. There's usually a middle ground, right? There's something that can be more affordable. Maybe it's an app that you pay for that helps hold you accountable, like Rocket Money, like some of these apps that I'm sure you know. But having some sort of professional help and guidance at whatever capacity works for you in your current state is just a no-brainer.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like with the financial planning thing too. Like maybe you're not ready to hire a financial planner yet, but you can download an app to help you track your money. Like it probably doesn't cost that much, right? And then eventually you build up to it as you need to. Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, I appreciate that. So I wanted to talk about some of the ways that being healthy can actually help you save money. Because people might not realize that too. There's a lot of things that are based on how healthy you are. So, for example, obviously, health insurance. My wife and I have a health insurance plan that every year they require us to fill out this form. And if we hit like certain trackers, it actually lowers the premium by $800.
Wow, really?
Which is pretty significant, right?
Sure.
So now we're motivated, like, oh yeah, like, we know that open enrollment's coming up. We got to fill this form out, and you got to write down your BMI and all this other stuff, your A1C. So it's an incentive, right? So you can save money just by being healthy, right? Some life insurance companies do the same as well. Also, another thing too, that this is something that you probably can't quantify, but if you're healthier and fitter, you're going to have more energy to actually do your job better. Maybe even put in extra work and get noticed more at work if you work for someone else, right? Or if you want to have a side hustle and you have a regular job, like you need to be in a good state, right? Both mentally and physically.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like if you're running at 100%, you're more likely to, like you said, get promoted, take advantage of opportunities that might not have been presented to you because you were at a low performer. It's interesting because now a lot of the CEOs and like highly driven people are starting to realize how impactful being healthy is. And so now if you start looking online and social media, there's like this big trend, and it's awesome. I love seeing it as a trainer and coach. There's a big trend to get you to be healthier because there's a direct correlation between that and performance. And obviously there's a big direct correlation between performance and success. And so, yeah, it's exactly what you're saying. And at the micro level, just day to day, it's also things like cooking at home. You're more likely to save money if you're cooking at home as opposed to eating out. So you're making your lunches. So yeah, there are a number of ways you can sit here and list them all, but I think those are some that would probably be helpful to the viewers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that being physically fit is going to give you more of a mental benefits as well, so that you don't feel as burnt out, because there are times when I don't feel like working out, and I will feel so much better like actually after working out. Like I do get energy from working out, even though I was spending energy doing it. But it's weird. It's kind of like it just replenishes you.
Yeah, no, and there's a reason for that. It's just neurologically the dopamine that's being released. Everyone has at some point heard the word dopamine. There's scientifically an explanation for why you feel better after working out. It's dopamine that gets released. So yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and let's talk a little bit about working out itself. Just some people, let's say women, for example, some women are kind of like they focus more on the cardio aspect because they feel like if they do weights, they're going to get too bulky.
They're going to get big.
Right? Do you see that in your practice?
Oh, God. I always sound like, listen, if it was that easy, all the men in your life would walk around, big puff chest, muscles like a bodybuilder. It's not that easy to
Good
put
point.
on muscle. Yeah, like all of us, trust me, we work out a lot. We do a lot of strength training. But no, it's fair. I think a lot of our job is just re-educating on the benefits of strength training, both for longevity, both for your health. A lot of times people think that working out is just an aesthetic thing, and that's primarily because of bodybuilding. But bodybuilding is such a small percentage of what exercise actually is. There's so many other things that you can be doing. I do always tell people that whatever is most sustainable is going to be the best thing for you going forward. So it might be, women starting with something high intensity like a group fitness class, or maybe yoga, or something like boxing, and then starting to come around to the idea of strength training, because at the end of the day, you do need both, is what the science is showing. Cardio is phenomenal, but it's more so for your heart health than anything. So you need to do it to have a healthy heart, super important. But then you also need to do strength training because there's a direct correlation between that and longevity. So there's two sides of the same coin. You can't choose one over the other. You basically need both.
Yeah, very true. And speaking of longevity, how about elderly clients? Because typically when you go to the gym, often like you don't necessarily see like a senior citizen there, but I feel like they should probably be in there too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And the good part is that you're starting to see it a lot more commonly now. Most of them do have some sort of guidance and personal trainer, just because it's outside their wheelhouse. They've never had experience. I mean, fitness is so new, right? Working out is so new that if you think about when they were our age, like a 70-year-old, when they were 15, 20, 30, it didn't even really exist. Like no one was really doing it. So they don't know how to navigate themselves. And there is inherent risk in exercise because of strength training in general. If you don't know what you're doing and it being as nuanced as it is, there is inherent risk, but it's super important. It's actually more important for an older person than it is for a younger person. It's like when you're young, you can kind of eat whatever you want and get away with it. But then as you start to age, you're like, oh, I can't eat this pasta after 10 p.m. because I'm not going to be able to sleep. It's the same thing with strength training. You can get away with it when you're younger, but as you start to age, you'll notice the people who are frail and aren't able to just conduct everyday things like lifting grocery bags, playing with their grandkids. And if that's important to you, which for the average person, that is super important, especially as you start to get into your older years, strength training should be at the top of your priority list. And I also would like to say it doesn't have to be at the intensity, and quite frankly, it shouldn't be at the intensity of what you might see like a 20-year-old going for their max personal record at the gym.
Benching 225.
Yeah, right. But there's a starting point for everyone. Like I work with a bunch of older clients, and it's a lot of the fundamentals. Like, let's make sure you can stand up off of this chair. Let's make sure that if, God forbid, you were to fall, you have the strength in your upper body to catch yourself. Because there's a statistic, something to the effect of, I think, after the age of 65, if you fall and you break something, you are 30. It's 30% chance of that being a fatal fall within the first year of recovery. So to put that into perspective, if you're over 65, you fall and you break something, 3 in 10 people usually pass away from the complications of that injury. That's massive. That's super massive. Important.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That is huge. Yeah. So that definitely brings it a lot more into focus, So, I love that you focus on that because it's the day-to-day activities, right? And also preventing you from having to be hospitalized or maybe even die because the odds are so high.
Yep,
and
exactly.
Living longer, spending time with your grandkids, your family, enjoying yourself. You can go travel as well. Travel takes a toll on you. But I know a lot of clients of mine that are elderly and they love to, go on their cruises and all that. So you want to have the stamina and the strength to be able to do all that too.
And that's what a lot of my job is just re-educating people and letting them know that, hey, fitness is not just about how you look. It's more so about how you feel and how you're able to progress through life through all stages of life. It should be something sustainable and something that will allow you to perform and to enjoy and to live life in a sustainable way.
I love that. Yeah, that gives such a different perspective on it. You mentioned cooking meals at home. So I wanted to talk to you about that. I started doing that more recently because, it's very easy. It's so much easier to go out or order in, right?
Sure.
But ultimately, it's bad for your pocket and your health, right? If you start eating out a bunch. So do you usually try to eat mostly organic, all organic? How do you navigate that? Because I know some people be like, hey, eating organic is so expensive.
Sure. The science is mixed from my understanding. Some people believe that organic is still has a certain amount of pesticides. Other people believe that it's all in the dosage. So yes, there are some pesticides, but they're at such a small dose that you would have to eat, for example, like 20 pounds of broccoli for it to even remotely start to affect your gut. So what I mostly try to do is I focus on ingredients, meaning if I'm going grocery shopping, and maybe you can't afford the organic, well, that's okay. You can still get broccoli and you can still get whole foods like eggs. You don't have to rely on it. Is still some sort of investment because a $3 box of cereal is going to be more calories and cheaper and easier to eat than maybe, the eggs, especially with inflation and how things are now. But it's worth it in the end. So I don't know as it relates to organic or not, but I would say it's still super beneficial for you to focus on ingredients more than anything and making sure that the types of foods that you have in your house are the ones that you can cook. So like as a basic rule of thumb, it's going to be mostly things like meat, if you eat meat, legumes, veggies, fruits, things that are like whole foods. That's going to ensure that you live healthier. And then obviously if you can go with the organic, then go for it. That's, more bang for your buck.
Yeah, I once heard, I don't know who said this, but I once heard that someone say, like, if the ingredients look like the back of your chemistry homework, you probably don't want to be eating it.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm always looking at different apps and different ways to actually use technology to help us navigate the landscape. There's a really good app I made a video on called Yuka. And basically
How do you spell that?
It's Yuka.
Okay.
For some strange reason, it's a carrot emoji instead of a yucca. You would expect it to be a yucca, but it's a carrot emoji. But essentially, you're able to scan most foods, and it gives it a numerical value on a scale of 1 to 100 on whether it's good or bad for you. It tells you what ingredients are in it, what preservatives, and then allows you to click on the risk level and go through the studies of exactly why it might be considered a high risk food. And that one's called yucca. And I use it pretty consistently. So you'll see me walking down the grocery aisle, scanning foods just to make sure that they're healthy enough and they don't have too many preservatives. Things like
I love that. Yeah, you're being very intentional. I'll put a link in the show notes for folks to find Yuka as well. Thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
What about, we just had the holidays, so a lot of people are traveling. I personally have made the mistake of during December, man, you go back home, you see family, like you just rules go out the window.
That's right. Yeah.
What are some tips that you have for people to stay healthy during travel, whether it's holidays, vacations, or business?
Sure. So yeah, in my past life, I was a consultant. So, right, I was traveling, going to client entertainment events and just spending weekends away from home. So I know from experience how difficult it is. But it's about being intentional and having a game plan. So some things that I found that are practical. If you're going to stay at a hotel, look up the area before you travel and look up some local restaurants. Everything is online now. You can find the restaurant, you can find the menu, you can literally have an idea of what exactly you can eat and make sure that they have enough foods that are going to be on the healthier end. You can invest in a workout program. So a lot of influencers and people in the fitness space, they sell digital programs where you might pay something like $50 for an at-home program. You pay it once, you have access to it forever. And every time you travel, you can tap into that program. So that's accessible for most people. You can, if you're going to a hotel, call the hotel gym and you can inquire about local places where people go walking or jogging. You can ask about the gym facility that they have, make sure that there's a place for you to do some sort of physical activity. Those are just a few of the things that come to mind. But when navigating travel, that I found that to be extremely helpful.
Yeah, that is helpful. That goes back to the first two P's, right? The proper preparation.
Exactly. The first two
Yeah,
P's.
because you being intentional. I really do like that. You know, when I travel, sometimes if it's for business, like I have a Roku that I use only for travel,
Oh,
so
nice.
I can just plug it into the HD slot in the computer and like watch like videos on YouTube. If you know, like what you were saying. So even like if you don't have a subscription, you can Google like, hey, 15-minute hit workout, whatever, right? And there I am in my
Exactly.
in my room working out. Sometimes with two bottles of water, whatever. Like you can make it
Yeah.
work.
And if you're traveling and you're going to be with family, change up the routine a bit, right? Like, let's say you're traveling for Thanksgiving, you guys just had this massive meal. Go for a walk, a 10-minute walk as a family, right? As a community, like share that experience. It doesn't have to be, because sometimes people are like, oh, I'm just not going to work out in my room. That's okay. Walk, do something, move your body. If you look at the blue zones in some of the areas in the world where they're living the longest, they're not in the gym. The gym is something that we've added into our routine because we've gotten to a point of this extreme comfort and convenience. But it doesn't have to be the gym. So just do your best to not be sedentary. Go for a walk, maybe there's a pool, go for a swim, do things that are going to get you burning calories and using your body. And that's a sustainable way to maintain your health as well while you're traveling.
Yeah, that's a great point. A great way of looking at it. Um, what would you say to someone? I'm sure you probably see this with your clients where they've been working at it for a while, they're not seeing results. What are some of the tips? What would you tell them to stay like on the course and not give up?
Patience. I would say the number one thing is patience. Understand that, because I have this conversation frequently. People are like, all right, yeah, like I'm super excited. Let's do it. I want to gain 10 pounds of muscle. Like, okay, great. We're 2 months in. They're like, hey, I'm not gaining any muscle. And it's like, oh, when was the last time you worked out? I never worked out. This is my first time. It's like, well, you're just going to have to be patient and give it some time. You have to keep the goal at the forefront of your mind and remember why you're doing it. So there's always a bigger why you want to lose weight, why you want to put on muscle. Keep that at the forefront, because if the why is big enough, it'll keep you waking up and it'll keep that discipline muscle in check. It's not going to happen overnight. It's just like you're not going to get rich overnight, which I'm sure you can attest to. Some people might have that same expectation coming in, but it's about having the conversation and helping them understand that it's a long game. It's a, for lack of better words, a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah, no, I love that. I'm a big believer in that visual, keeping the why up front. Even like posting things like on a vision board so that you see it often. You can see yourself in it, whether it's attaining a certain home or weight or fitness level. I really do love that concept. Yeah, I think a lot of people get into fads sometimes, and they want to see results
Right.
real fast, or they may get it, but it may not be sustainable.
And in your industry, I'd be curious to see what you think, because in my industry, people sometimes take advantage of that, meaning they're trainers and coaches where online it'll be like, uh, it's like, do these 5 exercises and you'll get a six pack, or like, learn how I lost 40 pounds in 2 weeks. And now everyone's expectations are all over the place, because so it can be somewhat predatory. Everyone's just trying to go for the sale. Do you see sometimes in your industry that as a practice where it's like, get rich overnight by doing X, Y, Z? Or is it more so you having to navigate the conversations, explaining why cryptocurrency might not be the best investment for a given individual and their tolerance of risk or circumstances, etc.?
Yeah, I'm glad you bring that up, because this is one of the reasons why I do this. Yeah, it's because there are a lot of people that don't have the credentials or the experiences I do, that,
Mm.
yeah, they have a ton of followers and they're just out there talking about, hey, let me show you how to slay the stock market. And I'm going to give you some
Yeah.
tips to become rich by 30, like.
If it was that easy. If it was
Yeah,
that easy.
so a lot of people, unfortunately, because this is what we've been accustomed to now. We get everything pretty fast, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
especially with your phone, right? You can easily order food and it'll be at your doorstep. we have Amazon where you can order something, be here the next day, sometimes same day, depending where you live. So a lot of people have gotten used to that concept. Like, hey, I just want to get rich. But it takes, like you said, discipline, automating your finances, using all these concepts we talked about, right? Working with a professional, a partner, and so on. So I do see that a lot. And unfortunately, they're not regulated because they're not even licensed. So they do get away with it, So it's one of the reasons why I'm here and I do this. And and I bring experts like yourself to kind of combat some of that stuff that people might hear. Because now is information overload, right? There's just so much information out there. People don't even know how to differentiate what's good and what's not,
Yeah, no, absolutely. And on both ends of the spectrum, I can imagine we're both dealing with it because people come to you vulnerable, right? So people might want to pay off their college loans. People might want to save for a house. That's a vulnerable conversation to have. Same thing for me. People might want to lose weight. People might want to redefine their body composition. It's going to take work, and it's vulnerable to have those conversations. So it's good to be able to reset expectations and have reliable faces in the space that are helping people achieve that without trying to sell them short-term solutions.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's why I'm doing this. Like I'm not selling anything, right? I'm not getting anything out of this. I just want to put the information out there.
Yeah. That's
and
awesome.
I appreciate you doing that as well. The
Of course.
content you put out there, I want to tell you something funny now. Like every morning I kind of think of you because I put on, when I'm putting on my socks and my sneakers, I saw you do a video about the balance.
Oh yeah. The old man test.
Yeah, the old man test, right? So I was putting it on and now I'm like very conscious of like, not wobbling, like falling off. And I make it a little challenge to myself. Let me put on, before I would sit on the bed and put on my socks. I'm like, you know what? No, like I'm gonna stand up and I'm gonna put on my socks standing. Obviously, it's great to look good, right? But it shouldn't be the only goal. Having that functionality and being healthy, and the looks, it would just be like a bonus to me. That.
Yeah, I always say that if you want to look a certain way, you'll train at the gym and have a lifestyle that will get you there, but that won't be the goal. The goal will be like a sustainable health, happiness, everything that comes with it. And then one day you'll wake up, you'll be like, wow, I look pretty good. Like I'm in pretty good shape. And it'll just happen. It's a byproduct. It's an end to the means, not the means.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, you'll notice clothes fitting differently, and you're like, "Oh wow, this looks good. I haven't worn this sweater in 2 years."
Right, exactly.
No, I love that. Thank you so much. This was amazing. I think it was a great information. I appreciate it. I'm going to put a link in the show notes. Well, where can people find you? I know you primarily on Instagram.
Yeah, I'm on Instagram. Ed Okasawa. That's EDOKASAWA. Why Okasawa? I like Japanese culture a lot, and I chose the Japanese last name that I thought was cool. And then on LinkedIn, which I'm sure a lot of your folks are, and I'm going to start posting a lot more content there once I get organized. Just Edward Castillo. You'll find me there.
Okay, yeah, I'll put links to both of those. Yeah, definitely not to young professionals on LinkedIn. Thank you so much for being here. Before I let you go, I have one final question. So,
that's it.
Elevator with a complete stranger. You're going to be together for a very short ride, maybe a half hour, 30 seconds.
Okay.
All right.
Sure.
They're going to get off. They won't know your name. They won't know your Instagram. They won't know anything about you. What would you like to leave that person with? That you say, hey, listen, if I never see you again, here's what I've learned throughout my life, or anything that I just want to like bestow upon you to better your life.
Yeah. Very good question. I would say in my 28 years of life, I've learned that your health is the most important thing that you have. No, regardless of what circumstance you're in, your money, if your health goes, then there's nothing else that's going to be more important. So focus on improving it, focus on maintaining it, and the rest will fall into place.
I love it. That's right. That's really the true wealth right there, is being healthy.
Yeah, exactly. Health is wealth. I don't know if you can see the back of the shirt, but I'm wearing it.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, health is wealth.
Health is wealth.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for being here, man. It was a pleasure. We'd love to have you back at some point. I know you're going to continue to work on bigger and better things, and I'll keep following you and see where you're at, man. And hopefully, have you back and you tell me
Yeah,
all those wonderful things you're working to help people. So thank you for being here.
absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for the opportunity. Yeah, thank you for just having the conversation. It was helpful. Appreciate you, Unc.
Oh, definitely. Always. Thank you all for tuning in. As always, if you have any questions, send me an email, luis@onmywaytowealth.com, and I'll see you in the next episode. Thank you for listening to On My Way to Wealth. If you have any questions, please send me an email at luis@onmywaytowealth.com. The information provided here is for information and education purposes only. The opinions expressed herein are solely those of myself, unless otherwise specifically cited. Material presented is believed to be from reliable sources, and no representations are made by my firm or myself about other parties' information or accuracy or completeness. All information or ideas provided should be discussed in detail with a financial advisor, accountant, or legal counsel prior to implementation. Thank you.